Hi everybody, my name is Amanda. Welcome to my channel if you're new, and if you are returning, welcome back. So today I'm discussing propaganda and how it's researched within the social sciences. There it is. So if you want to learn more about what I just said and had trouble saying, then continue watching. But I just wanted to make you aware that this information wasn't particularly easy to obtain. And at that, let's hop on into the fascinating but complex topic of propaganda within the social sciences. One powerful trait about propaganda is its subtlety and ability to blend in with everyday life. Any effective propaganda might be easily dismissed by those receiving it. Oh, that was just a TV commercial, or this was just a meme. Because of this subversive nature, it's hard to identify, and we have to identify something in order to define it. And this is seen in the literature as well. That said, after lots of research and delving into the various scientific papers, I've elected to go with this definition. Propaganda can be viewed as cultural symbols designed for the sole purpose of directing public opinion. These symbols may include images, music, movies, national holidays, etc. When envisioning propaganda, some would probably think of subversive materials created by groups, possibly made of agents from outside enemies. This is a form of propaganda called propaganda of agitation. Think social media accounts and memes created by Russian agents designed to disrupt the 2016 American presidential elections. Oh, and don't forget that all of my references I used for this video are in the description box below if you want to check them out. But moving right along, there is another type of propaganda that may be even more important than the one I just mentioned, and that's propaganda of integration. This type of propaganda is tailored towards, say, a nation's own citizens in order to encourage acceptance and support for a society's overarching system, like a system of governance or economic system. Traditionally, propaganda of integration is created not from the bottom up in the social hierarchy, like propaganda of agitation is, but from the top down, from authority figures or those in power. It reaches the citizens through the main channels of communication. For instance, advertisements, movies, news media, and even textbooks. As an example, consider the omission or intentional inaccuracies in U.S. history textbooks. Again, what makes this type of propaganda so difficult to spot is its presence everywhere. Integration propaganda plays a major role in today's social and political environments. Propaganda is able to spread like wildfire due to the advent of the internet and social media. It is therefore vital for fields within the social sciences to study propaganda as thoroughly as possible. And these fields are up for the task to explore and answer questions like, what are the psychological circumstances that makes one susceptible to propaganda? What are the factors in one's social environment that allows the ease of transmission of propaganda? Does propaganda truly change one's entire system of beliefs? Do people select certain features of propaganda to believe or ignore? A particularly relevant line of questioning to my area of expertise would be something like, what are the brain mechanisms involved when one not only interprets propaganda, but also begins to believe what they've been presented, even when the information is filled with multiple inaccuracies. Earlier I mentioned that I was having some difficulty when I was kind of going through the papers and looking for any research on this subject within the social sciences. And my research ended up evolving from where it first began with some of the questions I just mentioned to a question I honestly didn't really expect to have. Where is the research? Am I looking for answers in the wrong discipline? What's going on? I was able to find articles from psychology journals about propaganda from the 1930s to the 1950s, but really nothing afterwards. So what happened to the research on propaganda within the United States? I did find this answer, and it's quite disheartening. In the 1930s, social psychologists and sociologists created a subdiscipline designed to examine the social and psychological aspects of propaganda. And this subdiscipline was called propaganda analysis. These researchers created the Institute for Propaganda Analysis, which no longer exists. The Institute had some simple goals in mind, like create a place for researchers to collaborate on propaganda analysis, commission a centralized body of literature in this area of study, and in the Institute's considerably brief existence, they created textbooks tailored towards younger students on the importance of understanding and identifying propaganda for the sake of maintaining a healthy democracy, such as this following text. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Here's the title. Group Leader's Guide to Propaganda Analysis, revised edition of experimental study materials for the use in junior and senior high schools, in college and university classes, and in adult study groups. Okay, so maybe they weren't experts on creating workable titles. Moving right along, in addition to the research and text, they took on the very important responsibility of creating a standardized way to study propaganda. This is a very good thing to do, as researchers shouldn't be studying their subjects haphazardly, especially when those subjects are human. They also held regular discussions about how to present their findings so as to prevent dishonest actors from utilizing their work against others. Taken all together, what we're seeing here is a collection of researchers who are genuinely concerned about how propaganda impacts the individual and society. They created material for the purpose of informing the citizenry. They took the time to consider and create best practices on how to explore and even present this topic in an ethical manner. So, what could go wrong? The study that was propaganda analysis and the Institute were dealt considerable blows that resulted in the end of the field as an area of study within the social sciences, and the dismantling of the Institute on Propaganda Analysis. The first blow was that of a competing paradigm that was emerging around the same time the Institute was established. This paradigm was communication studies, of which some of its most ardent supporters and investigators were not academics, but consultants. These consultants, such as George Gallup and others, they conducted marketing and audience surveys for businesses and radio broadcasters, but they also convincingly argued their case for more scientific rigor and using advanced statistical methodology. This did not take much convincing, since this was the direction the social sciences were heading. For example, consider the advent and subsequent rise of behaviorism in psychology. Another aspect emerging at the same time was a new perspective on the role and placement of science in society. In centuries preceding the 20th, the role of science in society was quite broad and associated with Reformation movements in religion and government. This perspective changed around the mid-20th century. Science that was considered as good was that which was apolitical. Good science was science that no longer challenged the status quo and those in powerful positions. Propaganda analysis occupied too many spaces, and it failed to stay in its own lane. It was thus viewed as bad science. On the other hand, the rival paradigm of communication studies, well, it held an acceptable position by those in power. It focused on providing information to the powers of industry and political leaders. It was not interested in doing that which propaganda analysis was aiming to do, inform the public. Another hit propaganda analysis took were World War II and the events of McCarthyism that followed. Propaganda analysis and their dedicated researchers were viewed as subversive and anti-patriotic. You see, propaganda was needed for the war effort. It was needed for McCarthyism and Red Scare tactics. An informed citizenry who understood the use and appearance of propaganda may have been less susceptible to it. So funding for the research in propaganda analysis, well, it went away in favor of the politically neutral, private industry-supported communication studies. And by politically neutral, I mean not public-facing. Communication study researchers often work to produce information on behalf of those in politically powerful positions. As one author puts it, if the
raison d'être
of propaganda analysis was to create a citizenry alert to modern socio-political persuasion, the rationale and paradigmatic starting point of communication research was methodology and its practical usefulness for policymakers. Doesn't that make you all warm and fuzzy inside? This accounts for why material past the 1950s on propaganda within the psychological sciences essentially disappears. It was a victim of time, circumstances, politics, and, oddly enough, propaganda. Now that I leave you in a state of despair, a state I'm always in, because misery loves company. So next time, I will discuss the appeal researchers made to reestablish propaganda analysis within the social sciences during the 1980s. That's right, it's a two-parter. I'll also explore what is understood about the psychological conditions that may promote susceptibility to propaganda. And I'll include recommendations on how to resist unwanted social influence. Also, I want to thank my patrons listed here for supporting my channel. I really couldn't do it without them, and they're awesome. So thank you so much. And if you happen to like what you saw, please hit that like button. Does my thumb look closer? Doesn't that look awkward? Also, subscribe to my channel, because why not? And if you want to get notifications on when I upload a new video, make sure you hit the bell. So if you stick around this far, thank you for watching, and I hope that you join me in the next part of the series.